Hi, welcome to our online. Welcome to our webcast for March 18, 2016. Sorry for the bad beginning. My name is Christian Lebré, and this is Amy Asbrook, the director of Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet.
Hello.
Toujours Vivant, Not Dead Yet is a non-religious organization by and for people with disabilities and our ally. Our goal is to inform, unify, and give voice to the disability right opposition to assisted suicide, euthanasia, and ending of life practices that discriminate against people with disabilities. So, today's topics: self-directed home care, the key to autonomy, and contact your MPs. And this is Amy Asbrook.
Thanks. Okay, I have to make the right size. The most common reasons given for requests for assisted suicide and euthanasia in Oregon are loss of autonomy and ability to do tasks the person enjoyed.
This is the same for most North America.
Right.
Could be some slight difference, but we doesn't have to care about those small slight differences.
Right, and in other jurisdictions, we actually don't have the information about why people are requesting it. So yeah. That's where we're getting the information. Loss of autonomy comes when a person can no longer perform activities of daily living without help. These tasks include dressing, bathing, using the toilet, transfers to and from a wheelchair, cooking, eating, housework, laundry, and many others. And it's a lot of the tasks you'll notice are generally supposed to be women's tasks, but anybody living alone will have to do these things to sort of keep up their household on a daily basis. There are several models for providing help with activities of daily living. Institutional care, at home with help from family caregivers, at home with agency-provided aids, or at home with self-directed personal assistance services. In an institution, everything is done for the person who doesn't have to worry about meals, laundry, cleaning, or shopping. There are always people around to socialize with, and there are often group activities to participate in.
So many people find it suitable, but it's far to be perfect.
Right, and if you watch the ads on TV, it makes it look sort of like a summer camp.
Yeah, Maison Soleil, or how does he call it, this guy on TV, les maisons.
Partly cloudy.
Yeah, partly cloudy house.
Yeah.
As a fun thing.
Right. There's a joke about that's a joke. Yeah. That's a joke. You could laugh now.
Yeah, you could laugh at us too.
So a lot of them are made out to be like summer camps, but it's not always that good. On the other hand, the disabled person has no control over when and how the daily needs are met. When she wakes up, dresses, eats, uses the toilet, and bathes.
It's very close to the prison rules.
Right, or being in the army. You have to do things at a certain time. Nor does she have any say in how much time it takes to do these activities. For example, if she has difficulty swallowing, she may become undernourished if an assistant doesn't have enough time to help her eat her meals.
And those things had already happened quite a lot of time.
Right.
And there's bad things happening in those hours too.
Right. A lot of times people have to make the choice between getting a feeding tube and going undernourished because the staff at the
doesn't have enough time to feed them.
Exactly. In addition, the providers are trained according to a standard method, which may not meet the needs of an individual user. This can be dangerous where a standard technique, such as a certain kind of transfer, could cause harm to a particular person. Professional aides are often reluctant to listen to people with disabilities who are the experts.
Yeah, they study for it. So they was teaching that you have to do that way.
Right.
But it's not the same thing for everybody. Some people may have a slight difference.
Right, exactly. Some person might need to be positioned in their chair in a different way in order not to break any bones or have pressure sores. But if the person has only their one way to do it, and the disabled person says, no, you have to do it this other way or I'll have a pressure sore, sometimes the professional aid doesn't listen because they think they know better.
Many times, because if they don't do that way, the way that they was teaching, they may lose their job because it doesn't follow.
Right. But it's generally safe to assume that the disabled person knows what their body does and doesn't need.
That's true.
Yeah. Many residents, families, and advocacy groups see the conditions in some institutions as being like a warehouse, where high employee turnover and understaffing with low-paid workers can easily lead to conditions of neglect and abuse.
It's already happening.
Right.
A lot of time, and there is very awful story coming in the newspaper almost every week.
Right. There are very high rates of abuse of elders and people with disabilities, and a lot of that happens in institutional settings. And a lot of people are now starting to put cameras on that focus on their elderly relatives to catch abusers. With the high staff turnover rate, sometimes somebody who does something and gets fired in one institution might be hired in another one because they don't take time to do a criminal check, or the person doesn't have a criminal record, but they've still been abusive in another institution.
It's happening.
Care in institutions is also more expensive than receiving equivalent care at home. A 2002 report by the Health Transition Fund of Health Canada, which summarized 15 studies comparing long-term care costs in the home versus institutions, found that government paid up to 60% less to provide care in people's homes.
That's very sensational. A government should apply home care, right. Even if it's only 20% saving. They need money, and healthcare is the place in the budget who costs the most with education. So if you cut a bit, you cut a lot of money.
Right, right. So there is a way they could save some money by providing care in the home.
Without cutting services, increasing services.
Right, exactly. For these and other reasons, many people prefer to stay in their own homes. However, living at home means that the house has to be made accessible, which takes time and money. And I know that in Quebec, we have a waiting list of about 3 years or something,
which
for
is
home modification.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
Completely unacceptable. You could wait for a week, maybe a month, but not more. And it's why a government should invest a little bit to starting the wheel on the right direction. So to move in the direction of home care, you have to invest a little bit at the beginning.
Right.
To save a lot of money. But the government never look farther than the next election, which is at the most 4 years.
Right. The other thing is that Canada says it lauds itself for having a system where everybody's equal. You know, nobody is supposed to get treatment before another person. But the problem is that if you can't afford home modifications, you have to sit on that waiting list. But if you can afford to hire somebody to come and build a ramp on your house, you get the service before everybody else does. And so it ends up being a two-tier system where rich people get a better service than everybody else. Okay, so in having a family member provide intimate physical care, which is the cheapest alternative, may not always be a good solution. For example, Many people would find it inappropriate for an adolescent boy to provide intimate personal care to his mother, such as changing a tampon.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, there's supposed to be boundaries in the family.
yeah, it's comment on appelle ça ce que j'ai dit ce matin, c'était le inceste. It is close to incest.
Right.
It's not suitable.
Right, and when you break boundaries like that, it disrupts the family relationships, and it can, like Christian said, it can lead to abuse and difficult situations in the family. If a family caregiver has to give up a paying job to provide unpaid personal care, it can put a financial and social strain on the family, and that also puts a lot of stress on the household, and
Stress on the family, stress on everybody,
and it drives the family into poverty oftentimes.
And if we want to fight poverty, we should do something about it.
Right, they have all kinds of tax deductions for people who are providing care in the home.
But you have to make money to have that.
Right, exactly. If you give up a job and you don't have any income,
if you have a standard job, it doesn't work at all. If you have income without working, it could be interesting. But if you are a normal worker and leave your work as a plumber or whatever and go home, you lose quite a lot of your income.
Right. Isolation in the household, lack of respite services, the constant responsibility of care and loss of income, and long-term conflicts between family members can create the ideal breeding grounds for abusive situations. And that violence can go either way. Sometimes a child who was abused as the person who was abused as a child grows up and becomes abusive of the parent now that the parent is old and vulnerable, but sometimes it's still the parent who is being abusive to the caregiving child. Either way, it's not good. It's not a good situation for anybody.
It's obvious.
And so if you bring in somebody from outside who's not tangled up in those old relationships, there's less chance of, there's not that kind of chance for abuse, and there may be less stress in the home. A second option for home-based care is agency-provided aids. In this model, an agency contracts with the individual or his family to provide certain approved services, which are carried out by professional aides and funded by the government. So the government approves you can have this service, XYZ services, and somebody comes into your house and provides those services.
Yeah.
While this is an improvement over institutional care and family caregivers,
but as other solution, it's not perfect.
Right, exactly. It has some major drawbacks. First of all, the agency may send different people from day to day, thus creating inconsistency and disruption in how services are provided. So, for example, if you have a particular way you need a transfer to be done, and they send one person one day and you teach that person how to do the transfer, if they send a different person the second day, you have to teach that new person all over again.
All over.
Right, and it breaks, you don't have continuity of service, and it creates a lot of problems. The aide who is employed by the agency is not accountable to the disabled person for the performance of her duties.
They are accountable from their boss.
Right, exactly. So if the aide does something that the person doesn't like or that's harmful to the person, the aide doesn't, if you complain to the boss, they may or may not say anything to the aide. The aide may tend to do things by the book, even if it is not the best method for the person. So if you tell the aide, no, you don't need to do it, you shouldn't do it that way, the aide said, I don't need to listen to you, you're not my boss.
Yeah.
The administrative costs of the service are high, decreasing the amount of time that can be used for direct services. So if the government pays $30 for a service
to the agency,
they'll get 1 hour of service plus 1 hour of administrative cost. But if the government pays directly to the individual, they'll get 2 hours of service.
Yeah, it's obvious too, because it's a business, so the business needs to do money. So there is less money for the direct services.
Right, exactly. Another alternative is self-directed personal assistance services. In this model, the government pays money directly to the disabled person, who then hires, trains, supervises, and, when necessary, fires her own employees.
This is needing more responsibility from the disabled people,
Right.
But at the same time, it's freedom.
Right.
And the cost of the freedom is the responsibility that you get.
Right, exactly. It's more work for the disabled person.
Either.
Yeah, a lot more work, but you have more control in the situation. This idea, often called the independent living model, was developed by disabled people back in the early 1970s. At that time, disabled students pooled their money and hired an attendant to help them with activities of daily living.
It's the only way that was built by disabled for disabled.
Right, exactly. These were college students whose schedule wasn't the same as they moved out of an institution because their schedule wasn't the same as the elderly people that lived with them. And they moved into a dorm, and they all pooled their money to get an attendant who could help them when they needed to get up and get out of bed to get to their early classes or to stay up late partying.
Yeah, for students, it's a normal way to do.
Right, right. Everybody has the right to party. Gotta fight for your right to party.
Yeah.
Soon, independent living centers run by and for disabled people were established to provide peer support, to learn to manage their own attendance, and to advocate with government to direct home care funds to disabled people for that purpose. And the important thing is that they're run by disabled people, and a lot of organizations here in Quebec and in Canada are not run by disabled people, even though they're supposed to provide services to disabled people. And that creates a problem because when it's not disabled people, they don't have the credibility. They're not providing the service from their own direct lived experience, and they don't really have the same interests at heart as do the disabled people. If it's just a bureaucrat who doesn't really understand what it's like to live using a personal attendant, if they don't have that understanding, they're not in a really good position to run an organization that does that.
Okay.
Also, as Christian said before, it's a good way to employ people with disabilities because they are the perfect role models and perfect employees to do that job.
Yeah.
Teaching other people
and
those
the
skills.
rate of unemployment in disability and society is very, very high.
Right, exactly.
So it's a good way to solve two problems at the same time.
Right, exactly. Most jurisdictions now use a fiscal agent which evaluates how many hours of service each person needs per week, collects timesheets from the person for their attendance, deducts taxes, and issues checks based on a set hourly rate of services.
Basically, bookkeeping.
Right, they do bookkeeping services, and so it's much less administrative cost than the agencies because they aren't the employers of the attendants, and say they don't have to have all the benefits for the employees. They just do the basic bookkeeping. So it's the administrative cost
like
is much
any
lower.
businessman.
Right. Right. So it's a little less responsibility on the person. Makes it a little easier. They don't have to deduct taxes.
Yeah, they have to run their business like any business, and they have a bookkeeping service, which is normal too.
Right, exactly. The advantage of self-directed home care is that the person is in charge of who provides the services, when and how. If the person wants to get up at noon and go to bed at 2 a.m., she can hire attendants who can accommodate that schedule. And
yeah, it's nice job for a student most of the time, or handicapped people.
Right. A lot of students take that work. A lot of people who are new immigrants who may not be able to get a job somewhere else, they could take that work as well. So
yeah, and they could receive a better pay as that job, instead of working for an agency. An agency, they may receive.
Well, no, it's generally about the same as working for
yeah,
an agency.
could be the same, could be a little bit more. Basically, if it's handicapped people who doing the job.
Right. Okay. On the other side of the coin, this system puts much more responsibility on the disabled person to see to her own needs. She has the option of hiring someone who is not a professional caregiver, but she'll have to train that attendant how to perform the activities of daily living.
Yeah, but that's the cost of freedom.
Right. She will have to find somebody to fill in if an attendant calls in sick, and she'll have to handle filling out timesheets and making sure her attendants get paid. And I have a lot of friends who use personal care attendants, and when somebody calls in sick, it's really a bad situation.
Yeah.
Because you have to scramble to get somebody to come and get you out of bed in the morning so you can get to work. Otherwise, 2 people are sick that day.
Yeah.
If you're stuck in bed all day. And if there's a problem with the attendant, she will have to handle that problem or fire the person. The disabled person is the boss. And sometimes there are problems with disabled people who aren't assertive enough to say to somebody, no, you're not doing this right, or, I think you took money from me, and, I have to fire you because I can't be having people take money from me. Sometimes people do get exploited. It's not that this is a perfect system, but when you're the boss, you have to act like the boss.
That's true.
So people have to handle the problems, but it is a good system in terms of giving control and independence. For people who are concerned about losing autonomy, this is an effective way to reclaim control over the way activities of daily living are carried out.
Yeah, that's another way to live when you are handicapped. So there is choice for everybody if you apply those things.
Right, and one thing to keep in mind is even if you have some cognitive limitations that make some things hard, you can have a family member help you out with managing your attendance. You don't have to do it all alone. You can have the fiscal agent help out with the bookkeeping, but you can also have a family member help out with.
And nobody has to leave their job to take care of you.
Right, exactly. Exactly. Nobody has to leave their job to take care of you. Many people who are newly diagnosed with a disability or life-threatening illness are unwilling to accept the new limitations and count themselves as disabled, in part because of the stigma that comes along with disability. This can cut them off from potentially useful solutions like independent living services that they might not consider. And that's kind of a sad situation because people are cutting off their own alternatives because they don't want to think of themselves as disabled. And that happens a lot, actually.
That's happened a lot. When people lose their legs in an accident,
right.
It happened that you deny to be handicapped for quite a while.
Right. It's part of the grieving process.
Yeah.
And it's part of the grieving process that you have to go through and get to the other side.
It takes time.
Right. Once you get to the other side, you can accept that there are other alternatives. When you see fewer and less attractive options, these people are more likely to see the only acceptable choice as assisted suicide. If all you can see is the option of going into an institution or assisted suicide, then assisted suicide starts to look attractive.
Yeah, because you feel that you have a choice between lifetime time sentences or death, which is not the case if the government do their job properly.
Right. The more we can normalize self-directed, home-based, independent living services, the more people will see this as a viable alternative to assisted suicide. So that film, Intouchable, The Untouchable, that was out a few years ago that showed the relationship between the man and his attendant, that was a good film to normalize the relationship between somebody and his attendant.
And his attendant was a normal guy.
Right.
Who just learned to do interaction with his new boss.
Right, exactly. He wasn't a professional caregiver. He didn't really know anything about it. He had to learn from his boss everything, and that's sort of the way it worked out. Unfortunately, most care is still delivered in institutions. A lot of corporations, individuals, and governments have a lot of money and resources invested in this way of doing business. So
they doesn't want to lose their business.
Right, exactly. So despite the cost effectiveness and individual preference for home-based services, it will take a long time and a lot of public demand for things to change this out-of-date public policy. And in the United States, a group called ADAPT, American Disabled for Attendant Programs Today, has been working since 1990 to very hard to change the bias from funding to funding of institutions to funding to home care. And it was in 2013.
So it's a long fight.
The first year that more funds went to home care than went to institutional care.
23 years of fighting to go on the right direction.
Right. And that's with the fact that it's more cost effective and preferable for everybody.
Yeah.
The Special Joint Committee on Physician Aid in Dying did not include home care services among their recommendations.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
They give you the choice of being killed, basically. Right. That's the only choice they give you.
Well, no, they did talk about creating a secretariat for palliative care.
Yeah, they create some kind of bureaucracy and don't give you more choice.
Right, exactly. They didn't talk about everybody getting palliative care. They talked about creating a secretariat for palliative care.
Yeah.
However, the vulnerable person standard does include home care along with palliative care as essential for reducing vulnerability of people facing disability and life-threatening illnesses.
Essential is the key word.
Right. Both of those services are essential. And if you have those services, you're going to be less vulnerable to inducement to commit suicide. And that is the goal of the vulnerable person standard, to reduce that vulnerability. This is yet another reason to ask your member of parliament to include the vulnerable person standard in the new law governing assisted suicide and euthanasia. So, have you contacted your MP yet? To do so, visit Parliament's website.
You should.
Yes, at http://parl.gc.ca for phone numbers and email information, or you can send a free letter to your MP, no stamp necessary, at name of member of parliament, that's the first line, whoever your member is, House of Commons, Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, K1A0A6. So, we talk a lot about safeguards recently because that's where we left after the 2015 Carter decision.
Yeah, we are not now in the discussion if we will allow assisted suicide and euthanasia. This is already the case. this is allowed and forced by the decision.
Right. But really, at the bottom, at the fundamentals of our mission, we oppose assisted suicide.
Yeah, we are still against, and we will fight again.
Right. And there's several reasons to oppose the legalization of assisted suicide and euthanasia. First is that it's unnecessary.
We have proof of that.
Right, because everyone already has the option to commit suicide or to refuse medical care and have palliative sedation on demand. And you can go to our YouTube channel and watch the video of our interview with Gabriel Bouchard, who is a person who did exactly that. He refused medical care and he had palliative care until he died.
In a real hospital with the help of the hospital.
Right, exactly.
Before the law, and it was legal.
We also oppose legalization because it's discriminatory, because while people without disabilities receive suicide prevention services if they express a wish to die, people with disabilities will be encouraged and assisted to kill themselves. And we believe that's a double standard. That's discriminatory.
It is.
Also, choice is an illusion, because the choice to die cannot be free as long as people with disabilities don't have a choice of where and how to live.
For me, it's kind of obvious. If you have the choice between a kind of prison and death, you may choose death more often. If you have the choice between death and a group of propositions, starting from home care to assistance from an agency, going to a care center of any kind, you have a choice. And palliative care, sorry, my memory is very bad. Palliative care, you have a group of choice that allow you to think about a solution, not only to think death or a prison sentence. You have death and a group of solutions that you could choose. So the choice is more, let's say,
it's a wider choice.
A lot wider,
yeah. And another reason that we oppose the legalization is because safeguards don't work. Where these practices are legal, safeguards do not prevent people with disabilities from being wrongly killed.
If you believe that it will, you may drive under 100 kilometers all your life long.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Everybody breaks the rules, and that's no different with assisted suicide and euthanasia.
And it's a human way. We want to go further from any boundary. That's the way man is created.
Right.
And lawyers today have tendency to extend and stretch a word, or
right.
There is a comma not placed at the right way, and they pull on that thing until it's getting some effect in the way they want. And those laws have flaws.
Right, exactly. Let's see. To view our videos, we now have more than 60 webcasts available for viewing. To find them, go to YouTube and use the search engine of your choice and search for euthanasia and disability, and you'll find our videos. To participate live, send me your email address and I will send you a link to join us live. And our email address is info@tv-ndy.ca. For more information on the subjects that we talk about here, you can go to facebook.com/toujourvivant, not dead yet, all one word. You can visit our website at tvndy.ca. You can send an email at info@tv-ndy.ca, or you can follow me on Twitter @TVNDY. Thanks to Christian for helping out.
Thank you, Amy.
Thanks so much for being with us, and hopefully we'll
Thank
see
you.
you again next week. Take care.
Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye.